Tonight's programme is all about the C5. Will it? Can it succeed? There's a lot resting on it, not just for Sir Clive and his multi-million pounds investment, but for Wales too, because it's being built at Merthyr. Several hundred jobs are at stake. But first, what exactly is it? Well, here it is. 6 foot of plastic with foot pedals and an electric motor not unlike the one that drives your washing machine. They say they're going to sell 100,000 of them in the first year, but who'll buy it? In its favour, it costs only £400 and you don't have to tax or insure it. You don't have to put petrol in it either. You just charge the battery and for the cost of a gallon of petrol, you can travel 1,000 miles. On the other hand, you have to recharge the battery every 20 miles and its top speed just 15 miles an hour.
It's in the world of computers and video games that Sir Clive Sinclair has made his reputation and his millions. High street shops like this one have provided the fortune that he's investing in his electric vehicle. More families in Britain own home computers than in any other country in the world, thanks largely to Clive Sinclair. In 1980, he introduced the first cheap, compact home computer and the software to go with it. Since then, they've sold in their millions. Another Sinclair invention, a tiny television that fits in your pocket, was launched in 1983. It was the first in its field. So was the Sinclair pocket calculator and the Sinclair digital watch. In the electronics industry, Sir Clive has a proven track record. But what makes him think the market is right for an electric vehicle?
Well, I think that the market would have been right to C5 at just about any time. It's just that nobody's been able to do it before, or nobody has done it before. I think the C5 is an extremely attractive, exciting vehicle, which meets a lot of needs, and much more economical, for example, even than a bus to users. So it's a wonderfully cheap and convenient personal transport. It's simply that to do it is required a tremendous amount of research, R&D, and a colossal investment, which of course is a very high-risk way to go about things.
Are you worried about that investment?
No, that's the risk I take.
Sinclair's electric vehicle has been tailor-made to legislation passed in 1983. To qualify as an electrically assisted tricycle, it had to have pedals, a top speed of 15 miles an hour, and comply to weight and power limits. By conforming to these regulations, the Sinclair buyer saves on road tax, insurance, a driving license, MOT and number plates. There's no need even for driving lessons. Running costs work out at a penny for 5 miles. Motoring organisations tell us that even a small car would be 40 times more expensive.
What sort of people do you see buying and using the C5?
Well, a very wide range indeed. Of course, the 14-year-olds and upwards will be a new category of motorised vehicle users. But anybody that uses a bus today would probably find the C5 much more convenient and less expensive to use. Anybody that's got a commuting job to do or shopping to do. So if you take a typical family, I think that it'd be very hard to find a family in which the C5 wouldn't fit in, wouldn't meet one person's need. And I think there'll be many families where more than one C5 will be needed.
At the Hoover plant in Merthyr, they're hoping desperately that Sir Clive's prediction will come true. A slump in the company's washing machine market has meant thousands of jobs have been lost over the last 10 years. Merthyr now has one of the highest unemployment rates in Wales. Production of the Sinclair vehicle, with the help of a sizable grant from the Welsh office, could bring new prosperity to the town.
It will certainly help to safeguard the future. We have announced to our workforce a major investment program in new technology and mechanisation, which will result in a further shedding of jobs. The C5 project will absorb some of those jobs that are being shed.
What about union reaction?
Very good and very positive. We have involved them in the project from the early days, and they have been very constructive in their approach to the project, and of course very helpful in maintaining the secrecy on the project.
Keeping the project secret has been a major problem since Hoover won the contract to assemble the C-5 in May 1983. During the day, cameras search the factory grounds for any breach of security. At night, they're fitted with infrared eyes. Good morning, Bob Humphrey.
Good morning, sir. We are expecting you, sir. Have you any ID, please?
Yes, I did. Security guards check any visitor entering the plant. Everyone working on the project has been sworn to secrecy. A curtain has been put across the entire production area to block off the assembly lines from any prying eyes. Even if the doors are left open, no passers-by can see what the C-5 looks like. Routine testing of the vehicle is carried out on the factory floor. The road tests were held in the dead of night when nobody was about. Secrecy has been everything. But won't people feel let down when they realize the C-5 isn't like a family car?
So if people were expecting a family four-seater, they might be disappointed, but I think most people will be excited by what it is. It's a new vehicle that fits a new slot. We plan, of course, moving into the future to make larger vehicles, longer range, and by the early 90s we're confident that we'll be in the business of making full range, that is hundreds of miles, full speed, that is 70, 80 miles an hour, full family vehicles. But that, of course, will be a very different product from the one we're selling now.
At the turn of the century came the oil boom. As new wells were sunk, petrol-driven vehicles came into their own. Petrol was plentiful, but the petrol engine was noisy, smelly, and polluted the atmosphere. Petrol is expensive, and more importantly, it's running out. When even the smallest car is a gas guzzler, the race is on for an alternative source of power. Today, the world's political leaders are aware of the need for an alternative. When Mrs. Thatcher visited the Nissan car works in Tokyo, she showed a great interest in one specific aspect of production.
Well, what goes on in here? Can I have a look in here? Can I have a quick look in here?
What interested Mrs. Thatcher wasn't Nissan's conventional cars, but their electric vehicles. The Japanese have been testing electric prototypes for several years. So has the American car giant General Motors.
I feel very, very sure that this is going to be this, maybe not this configuration, but the electric car is coming in the next 10 years.
What do you need to have or do in order to make sure of that?
We need really one more breakthrough in the area of battery technology. The rest of the mechanism we think we know how to do. We need a lighter battery with more capacity.
General Motors have built a dozen prototypes. Each looks much more like a car than the C-5. But Sinclair isn't waiting for that breakthrough in battery technology. He's setting the pace for his rivals.
This product is really in that same mold that the calculator, the pocket calculator originally, and the home computer was in. When if you'd run market surveys prior to their launch into the market, then you'd have had a very bewildered public that weren't quite ready for them or ready to demonstrate the need for them. So a lot of our marketing is really based on Clive Sinclair's gut feel as to what the public is ready for, whereas perhaps they're not really naturally aware of that need at this stage.
Assembling the C-5 at Merthyr has created 150 jobs. The parts are imported from all over the world, from Europe to the Far East. Some electronic components are made locally. The body itself is also British. In the assembly area, the workers in their spotless white overalls look more like doctors than factory hands. When the C-5 is assembled, it's put in boxes ready, the company hopes, for delivery to 100,000 homes in the first year. You simply take it out and drive it away.
This vehicle will generally run along the side of the road, which is typically the poorest quality part of the road, as a cycle does. The C5 driver will find he doesn't need to drive around the potholes and the drain holes.
What sort of a life do you expect the C5 to have?
Certain of the key components have been developed for around 5 years of what we expect to be a good annual average. That's to say, based on 3,000 miles per year, and it's quite likely that most vehicles will not in fact be driven 3,000 miles a year. Key components like the motor and the transmission, for example, they have a 5-year or 15,000 mile design life.
Work on the electric vehicle began nearly 4 years ago. Millions of pounds have been spent on its development. The final check on each vehicle is done at Merthyr. Sophisticated equipment tests whether it can take the weight of a full-grown man. The Hoover workforce tends to refer to the C5 as a car. Sinclair's staff are adamant it's not.
It's based on a semi-recumbent tricycle. In other words, you sit in a chair-like position with the handlebar under your knees. That's been around for a fair while. But the control itself is a good example of how what started out as basically a cycle component has become much more. Because on a tricycle, for example, your pedals are the controls and your brakes, and that's all you need. Whereas on a powered vehicle, there are all kinds of switches and things that you need to operate while you're steering the vehicle. So that's why they're all grouped in various areas on the handlebar.
Imagine a vehicle that can drive you 5 miles for a penny. A vehicle that needs no petrol, just a battery. And that takes the press of a button to start, the squeeze of a lever to stop. That needs no license, no road tax, and you can drive whether you're 14 or 40. A vehicle that costs just £399. The Sinclair C5. It's a new power in personal transport.
The normal steering control is quite easy to operate. It's in an unconventional position underneath your knees, but your hands fall naturally to it. The brakes, this one on the right operates the front brake, and the left hand brake lever operates the brakes on the rear.
There are no gears, so how do you go backwards?
To go backwards, which you don't often need to do, then you just wheel the vehicle backwards by getting outside, or you can scoot by rotating the wheels backwards for small manoeuvring, or you can put your leg over the side and scoot with your foot.
Now, I've got you here to explain it to me, but let's say one of these was delivered to my door. How would I learn to drive it?
When it's delivered, there will be a complete handbook with it, and we would advise all users to read the handbook and understand the handbook before they start using the vehicle.
The C5 is simple to drive. All the controls, apart from the pedals, are on handlebars underneath your knees. The vehicle is designed for outside use, and in Britain that usually means driving in the rain. So, how do you keep dry?
Your vehicle is dry if you've got your tonneau cover. So as you arrive at the vehicle, you just take it off and put it inside the locking boot.
So there is storage space as well?
Yes, there is, yes, locking, yes. And what you have on the vehicle here is half of a weather protection system that's been developed. These are canvas doors, effectively, that protect you from cold wind when it's not necessarily raining. They open to get in and out like that. The other half of the weather protection system is that garment on the wall, which you wear around as a normal rain top. It'll fit over an overcoat, for example. And when it rains, you open a kangaroo pouch sort of affair and pull out an apron, really, that velcros on to these side stripes on the pocket, and that seals you in with enough room to pedal. And,
so you're almost in a
really is the business of making a vehicle that meets a total family need, that does replace the standard family car today. And we're confident we know how to do that. We've got a long way to go, we've got a lot of work, we're already sort of working the wind tunnel on these vehicles. It will take new battery technology, the family vehicle. It'll take a lot of other new technologies as well, but we're confident we can do that. As far as the customer's concerned, it'll be different in quite a few ways from today's car. It'll be much quieter for a start. It'll be much longer lived. There should be nothing intrinsically to wear out. An electric motor can be made to last very much longer than an internal combustion engine. There will, of course, be no petrol to put in it. It'll just be recharged overnight, or indeed perhaps at a fast recharge station on the journey, if the journey is a very long one. It's very much less expensive to run. I'm very excited about this, not only because it's sort of the advantages to the user, but I think the advantages to the environment. The removal of pollution, both noise pollution and atmospheric pollution, could change our society quite a bit.
With the production of the C5, Clive Sinclair is taking on the giants of the motor industry. He's never faced rivals on that scale before.
Every day I hear a different story. People saying that you're no good for me.
But the whole C5 project will stand or fall on how safe it proves on Britain's congested roads. Already it's been criticised by motoring and safety organisations and by some police forces. But Clive Sinclair is convinced the vehicle will be safe.
The vehicle, of course, is designed to be highly visible. It's light in colour, it has reflection strips around it, it has the rear lights and front lights. So it's very, very much safer, say, than a bicycle, which might be the alternative form of transport. I think it'll be the most vividly visible vehicle on the road, and a person in that, I think, will be far safer than, say, as a pedestrian or as a cyclist.
Don't you think that with the top speed of 15 miles an hour, it could lead to snarl-ups in cities?
It's surprising how slow traffic actually travels in a city. 15 miles an hour in that vehicle feels fast. You get about very fast. It's faster than the average traffic moves, in fact. It's about twice as fast as the average bicycle. The vehicle, of course, is very narrow. It's barely the width of a motorbike, so it doesn't take up a vehicle space on the road, doesn't take up a car space. I would imagine them travelling on the left-hand side of the road, say, and cars passing quite readily.
Aren't there then possible dangers to pedestrians? If you have a 14-year-old who's not used to driving anything other than a push bike, surely that does pose some problems.
I think the 14-year-old would be a lot safer in this, both to himself and to the pedestrian, than he would be on that push bike. And a push bike is very much easier to skid, lose control, or be missed visibly than this vehicle.
But if an old lady were to step out in front of a C5, then he could give her quite a wallop.
So he got on the bicycle, yes, but I mean, first of all, she's going to see this vehicle much more readily, and secondly, it's his 14-year-olds, whereas a 6-year-old could be on a bicycle after all. So one imagines they're going to be a lot more sensible.
Should the driver of a C5 take out insurance, do you feel?
No, I don't think so, except perhaps against theft. He's most unlikely to damage anyone else. He's most unlikely to be damaged himself, so then insurance on those sort of grounds wouldn't arise, I don't think. The vehicle itself would be very hard to damage. It's not. I mean, should be much better than a conventional car in that sense. If you bash a car, you're going to dent the bodywork in, maybe chip the paint. That won't happen with the C5.
James Tighe is Director General of the British Safety Council, and the Sinclair Corporation has threatened to sue him because of remarks he's made about the C5. Mr. Tighe, what is it that you've said that so upsets Sir Clive and his people?
Well, I've said several things. I've said, number one, the idea of a 14-year-old kid being allowed to drive this vehicle without a license, without insurance, without a seatbelt, without a skid lid, maybe even without training, frankly appalls me. That's the number one thing. I've also said I consider that the vehicle itself has safety optional extras. For instance, you see this huge vehicle. I drove up here this morning and I came up the Archway Road and I was overtaken by German and Dutch and French things this size, and a vehicle driver would not be able to see this thing at all if he were driving. So I've said it's not visible.
You're talking about safety options. What do you mean?
I'm talking about safety. So they've brought into being a kind of a telescope operation that works in the back of the vehicle. I say if it's a safety aid, it should be included in the vehicle.
This is the reflector thing that you attach to the back.
That comes on the back here. So I think that ought to be included in the vehicle.
So you have to buy that as an extra?
Yeah, well, she shouldn't be as an extra. Nor I think also that you should have indicators, because the idea of driving along holding the steering wheel under one's bum or one's thighs isn't good enough, because you've got to take your hand off.
But there are indicators, aren't there?
No, there aren't. That's an optional extra.
So again, you have to pay more.
So the optional extras, the safety extras, as it were, in my view, ought to be built into the vehicle. Now, that apparently upsets Sinclair vehicles, and that's why they threatened to sue me. But frankly, if people are going to sue safety councils or the media or chief constables because they make valid criticisms, then that's a crazy situation.
Well, now, you're a motoring correspondent of many years' experience. You've driven all sorts of vehicles.
Yes.
Ever driven anything like this?
I've never driven anything quite like this. I have driven some other electric vehicles, and I must say I'm one of those people who slightly grits my teeth when I see a milk float in the road ahead of me, because I know it will hold up the traffic. And I think a vehicle like this, for lots of people to drive, is perhaps 20 years out of its time. The traffic conditions today are such that...
You mean 20 years ago it would have been
20 years ago, it might have fitted into the lesser number of vehicles on the road, but today, to see something of this size, as low down as this, it's very visible, but I think a driver of a big heavy truck turning a corner might not actually notice something like this under his wheels.
£400 though, do you think it's good value?
If you can use it on the road, if you can belt about in it, yes, it perhaps is, but I'm not sure that it's £400 worth of road safety. I wouldn't like to let my children out in it.
Criticism and doubt there may be in some quarters, but not in the Sinclair empire. From the humblest factory hand to the managing director, they're convinced the C5 will be a success both in Britain and worldwide. If the vehicle does sell in large numbers, it could be that the government will pass some new legislation to control its use. But at the moment, that's not something that worries the workforce.
I think we're all in it together, you know, we feel as if we're all one body rather than a them in a situation. I really like it.
Do you think the vehicle will be a success?
Well, we all hope so, but I think we all favourably impressed by it, absolutely.
I think it will be, definitely. I think it'll be a success.
Why do you think it'll take off?
Well, once the children start seeing it, you know, it's so cheap to rent. And if the price is right, I think it'll sell.
You know, we're all totally committed to it as a workforce, and we intend to see that it is a success.
Certainly C5 should be looked upon as being the first in a family. The family may take until the early 90s to complete in that sense, and certainly C5 should be looked upon as being the baby of the family.
So you will be progressing further?
Without doubt. We are in the vehicle business for sure. All of us that have joined the company want to see it with a very much of a long-term history to it, and something for us all to leave behind to somebody else to take over and run later on.
Tonight, a lot of workers in Merthyr will be keeping their fingers crossed that the C5 will be the start of something big. They're confident that it can be. So is the man who masterminded the project, Clive Sinclair. He sees a brave new world just around the corner for a whole new generation of electric vehicles.
I believe firmly that all cars ought to be electric by the next century. Certainly we should all be changing over. And I want to see a world in which all vehicles are electric and non-polluting. So that's one goal, and I want to be very much a part of that. The other sort of great goal is to see artificial intelligence, human-like powers in computers.
And the two could be married together, could they?
They could be married. I think that that electric vehicles can, with electric vehicles and the degree of control one can have over them, one can foresee considerable gains. I'd like to see a future in which you take an electric vehicle, you drive it from your house on an ordinary road, perhaps you go onto a special sort of motorway where it goes onto a track under automatic control, perhaps travelling at a couple of 100 miles an hour under that, in that regime. And then when you tell it when you want it to leave the road, and it leaves it automatically, and you take over on the minor roads. So that we'd be able to combine the advantages of the family car with the high-speed rail, or indeed almost perhaps with the speed of flight.
Well, that's a long way from this. But maybe Sir Clive is right. Maybe this is the forerunner of the electric car of the future. The Model T Ford of its day, if you like. Or maybe the critics are right. And maybe it is just a rather dangerous, pint-sized white elephant, which perhaps we shouldn't take too seriously. Good night.
Right, so let's give it a go. Feet on the pedals, ignition on, handbrake off, and away. Away? Away? We're not away. What happened there?
We've also gone one better and added a high-level reflector affair, which goes in the back like so. Pushes in. Pushes in. I'm supposed to say something very silly here, like...
I've been driving my car.